Hey guys, Brent Hull for Old House Journal, talking today about power tools. Which power tools do you need for your old house now that you've got your projects in front of you? Which are the first tools you should buy? Today in Old House Journal. Okay, so power tools are something that very early on when I was in college, I actually worked for power tools. I had a sign, I will work for power tools. Not really. I did though, love buying power tools. There's something about them, right? And so you do need some hand tools, but you also need power tools. And then there's a myriad of tools out there. Which ones should you buy? Now, what I've got is I've got kind of three tools. We've got, cutting tools and we've got attaching tools, right? And we'll talk about each one. The first question we need to get out of the way is power or battery, right? Should we use a cord or should we go with a battery system? And so there's no good answer, okay? If you're gonna be doing something a lot, okay, you definitely need something with a cord. If you're gonna be sawing all day or really working on something where you've got a lot of power that you need, the batteries just aren't there yet, in my opinion. At the same time, things like a drill, I would never go back with a cord because this thing can go on forever. Because you're starting and stopping, which is really good for batteries as opposed to just long continuous holding it down, the batteries actually work quite well. Now, when you get the batteries, I would encourage you to stay within a family of tools, right? Because the Bosch batteries won't fit the DeWalt tools, and I have gone with the DeWalt family of tools, okay? And so now my sanders, my drills, my cutters, right, they're all the same family of tools. I would encourage you kind of to buy within the family. The other thing is that they sell them in packs now, where they'll have one power pack and they'll sell 5 tools with it. That, for a starter house, is a great way to go. Now, the first tool I think you should buy is a drill, okay? Now, typically these drills come in 2s, okay? You can buy them in 1s, but typically they'll come in 2. And one is for drills, right? Where you're trying to drill a paddle bit or something through a piece of wood, right? You need a drill. They have multiple speeds here. Most all of them come with a light, so that if you're shining on something, as soon as you pull the trigger, this light will turn on, and there's now different settings for these lights. These tools have come so far, and I have these hooks on them, so I can hook it on my belt or hook it on my back pocket so that's always with me. These are great tools. What it comes with too is an impact driver, okay? Now what an impact driver is, I set my bit in there, and if I'm drilling something in, and you'll hear it when I do this, hear that? That is almost a hammer type drill. And the reason that's so great is that if you're driving something in, this will slowly impact it in and not twist your bit off, okay? So sometimes with these brass screws in old houses and things like that, if you aren't careful, that screw will break. And I've done that enough times to know how frustrating it is. And sometimes having an impact driver or being able to take your clutch back and do it to a really loose setting is something that's very effective on an old house. But because of fastening tools today, because of the advent of the drywall screw, you no longer have to hammer things in. You don't need a hammer and nail anymore because these tools are so effective. They're almost self-driving. They're very easy to use. They create a really great piece of joinery, and so this should be your first, if not your first, pretty close. This is it's a multi-tool. It's an oscillating saw, and it's called a multi-tool because there's a number of different tools you can apply to this. Now notice I've got the DeWalt version. There was a company called Fane that had the patent on this tool, but it's a very handy tool because it can fit into such tight places, right? And generally they will come with all kinds of other tools that you can get with it. They have a sanding head so that you can actually sand into tight corners. And it comes with a number of different heads, and it comes with a number of different saws that you can use. Now, let's say you cut your hole, there's a hole in your plaster and you need to cut some wood inside of there. This is a perfect tool, okay? Because they can fit inside there, and look at the motion on it. The motion is just this oscillating head that moves back and forth. So those teeth, right, will just sit there, and if I just put it down onto this piece of wood, let's say, I can cut right into that wood just by holding that blade on there tight. So it's a real handy tool. Now, it is not something that if I wanted to cut this table in half, right, this is not the tool I would use. But because it has so many different uses for metal, for sanding, for cutting wood, for cutting things in tight places. This is a perfect old house tool because it's versatile. Now, the other saw I'd recommend is this Bosch tool, okay? So this is a Bosch, this is the JS470E, okay? Now, when I got out of North Bennett Street, a lot of guys, we were getting into carpentry, we were going to be hired out. I didn't end up buying a skill saw. Skill saws with the rotating blade that moves around. I ended up buying a jig saw because these tools are so versatile, okay? I can cut trim with them, I can cut plywood with them. You know, it wasn't just a matter of cutting across the board. The advances in this tool and its ability to move this blade like this, okay? There's a dial back here that you can move back. You can adjust how this saw cuts. So instead of just going like this, it actually does this. It actually creates a saw motion. There's a blower here that actually can blow the dust away from the saw line if you're following a saw line. The removal of the blades are so easy, right? You just open this thing up. Now, they've come a long way since I had them. But the nice thing is you can buy all different kinds of blades. I can buy, 10 teeth per inch. I can buy very fine tools. I can buy metal cutting blades. So this is a tool that now all of a sudden has a lot of different uses on metal, on wood, and is super versatile. I think it's more versatile, and that's really what we're looking for in tools if we're just buying in the early stages, than a skill saw. Skill saw is great for cutting wood, okay, especially ripping long boards and stuff like that. But for cross cutting, it doesn't blow up the splinters as much. It's a great handy tool to have if you're just bought your house and you're just looking for some tools to saw, to cut, to fasten. This is kind of the family I would start in. You might say, well, what about a table saw? What about a chop saw? What about a miter saw, right? I see those things as like a table saw. Unless you're getting into woodworking, I wouldn't get a table saw. I don't think that you're needing to rip boards and do that kind of heavy lifting, right, that you would need a table saw for. Chop saw or miter saw is something that you might consider if you've got a project like, running a trim in a room or something like that. I would probably rent one first. There's a bunch of different types of saws out there. And unless you're going professionally, you're still going to start running crown for builders and stuff like that, I wouldn't buy a compound miter saw, right? That's where those tools come in. So the last tool you might consider is a nail gun, okay? Nail guns too are becoming something where you don't need a compressor, kind of with compressor, without. The reason I like a compressor is because a compressor can be used for a lot of different things. I blow out my house or blow out my shop with my compressor now. If you've got a trim project, right? You got to reattach trim in your house or something like that. Nail gun's very handy as opposed to trying to drive them by hand. So guys, these are kind of the first starter tools, right? You can always buy more tools, right? That's the great thing. The drill and the drill driver, the impact driver are great starter tools. The multi-tool, as the name implies, can be used for multiple different things. This jigsaw, this Bosch jigsaw is a really great jigsaw. That should give you kind of the foundation tools, right, that you're gonna need to cut, to fasten, to figure out and fix problems on old houses. The other tools I would rent to start unless you have a really big project where you're gonna need them, those tools should get you started on your first house. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook, Hull Millwork, Hull Homes, a lot of behind the scenes things that we're doing there, hopefully make you a smarter homeowner. I'm Brent Hull, thanks for watching.